Hello everyone, welcome back to Extract the Fact. I'm your host, Adam Israelovitz. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that is usually debated nationwide, and there are so many different cases that happen on a state-by-state level and in cities and different municipalities that it is a really prevalent issue, and I think it's important to discuss it, and that is eminent domain. So a lot of people don't really know the true definition of eminent domain, so I want to get to that first and get that out of the way, and then we can debate both sides of this. So first, eminent domain is the power of a state, provincial, or national government to take private property for public use. So that's what it is at its core. And it's derived from the Fifth Amendment, which in a section of the Fifth Amendment says, in our Constitution, it says, "Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." So that is the core phrase that is always being debated, without just compensation. So can the government take something if the private owner is compensated justly? So today we're going to argue both sides. First, I'll present the arguments that's saying eminent domain is just a way of furthering government power to benefit the public good. And on the other side, eminent domain is a violation of rights. So kind of both sides. One, government promoting the public good, and on the other side, it's a clear violation of private rights. So we're going to debate both sides. First, I'll take the pro-government, pro-eminent domain view, and let's just get right to it. So first, there's a good summary of what the positives of eminent domain on Plantism, the website. And this author says, in just a quick sentence, quote, "Sites are needed for schools, hospitals, libraries, and police stations. And where would our cities be if there were no roads, freeways, or corridors of transit that were built with the aid of eminent domain?" So at its core, eminent domain has these positive reactions that different public infrastructure sites are needed, and the government must take this action to strip private land for the public good. As he said, hospitals, roads, freeways, those are things for the public good and public infrastructure. So in particular, for example, if we look at an infrastructure benefit of taking a strip of private land for a new highway. So let's say a new highway, in exchange for just a strip of private land, the state can get an increase of revenue from tolls, better trucking industry, and lowers transportation time for everyone. So that all that happens from taking one piece of land and making it for the public good. Now, from the Home Guide's website, this is another interesting point. They say eminent domain makes community projects possible. So here it says, quote, "If eminent domain was not a governmental power, certain improvements to infrastructure would be impossible to implement. For example, a single business owner in a city would refuse to sell her property to the local government, making it impossible for the authorities to clear the way for private developers to replace outdated buildings. Or the business owner could fleece the city, demanding an exorbitant sum for the property because she knows how much the city's long-term plans depend on it. With eminent domain, the government has all the power it needs to force the property owner to give up her property. In return, the property owner receives just compensation for the property, which she is not out of pocket. Just compensation is equivalent to a property's fair market value." So that's really important there, how just compensation is equivalent to the property's fair market value. So it is not like the private owners completely getting fleeced, is what many people of this argument would say. In addition, on Plantism, and I found a lot of good stuff on that site, it said, if we take another example, an old train station, for example, in Houston, this was land that was just a private strip of land that was worn down and run, that the public acquired, and it actually created Minute Maid Park, which is a baseball stadium in Houston, and it has benefited the communities downtown in a significant way. The stadium actually brings in millions of dollars each year and millions of people into downtown Houston, a place that had previously been a rundown area, and now it is a lively 24/7 environment. So that is only possible, as Home Guides, this site argues, that is only possible through this government intervention. So that actually stimulates the public good, and it's better for all. So now if we take the other side of the coin, arguing the anti-eminent domain approach, saying this is not what we should be doing, the government should not be taking private land. First, that is actually the pretty popular opinion. So if we just look at from NPR, they say, quote, from a podcast, quote, "Well, there is a consensus, Democrats and Republicans at the local level," stressing local level, "that are supporting homeowners. And you are going to see that trend against government intrusion into private property like this for alleged public purposes." So again, local support, grassroots support is again anti-eminent domain, and it's unpopular in many states. So if we just take a Quinnipiac, Connecticut poll, it shows that 89% of state voters want the General Assembly to restrict the state's power of eminent domain, with 61% opposed to even some of the traditional ways of eminent domain. So 61% in Connecticut are opposed to eminent domain to make schools, to make roads, to build hospitals, anything for the public good. They're actually opposed to that because they see it as a violation of privacy rights. Another argument for this anti-eminent domain side is gentrification. So eminent domain, although you can be justly compensated, can force low-income families and urban minorities out of their homes in exchange for this public good. And obviously this public good can be interpreted in many different ways. The government's public good can be different than people in the inner city's idea of the public good. So again, that phrase is a cause for a lot of debate. And this public good is actually where large corporations tend to benefit disproportionately from the new investments into this property than the old homeowners of the town. So it is a controversial issue, and gentrification is at the core of it. In addition, there's this theory that, okay, well, you could put in a road and it might increase tax revenues, but is that really worth a mass movement of thousands of low-income people to be forcibly moved from their homes? Is a little increase in tax revenue from a new highway really worth moving thousands of people situated in their homes? And many people of this argument would argue that is immoral and that is against the United States Constitution. Now, another idea, and this is less common obviously, but there is eminent domain abuse, where the market value for the property still does not mean the person wants to sell this land. So again, they're being forcibly removed. Just because you give them compensation doesn't mean they actually want to sell the property. So there is that, ebb and flow to the situation, which makes it a really interesting dynamic. So I think that about covers it. Eminent domain is a controversial issue, and it's one of the few issues that really is, you have to assess case-by-case basis. I gave some examples. As you notice, there are a lot of anecdotes in here, but it is something that you really have to assess case by case because each thing is different, whether they're building a road, a school, a new, I know in LaGuardia Airport in New York, they're building a new rail track that might interfere with some people's homes. So there's always that contrast between the private and the public good and what that means. So I think it's really interesting. Comment below if you're interested in it and let me know your thoughts. All right, thanks.